Welcome to my channel Vision. The house was unusually silent, as if it had been holding its breath since the day Mom passed. I, Alex, found myself wandering through the rooms, each one filled with memories of her laughter, her scolding, her comforting presence. Dad sat in his armchair in the living room, staring blankly at the muted television, a vacant look in his eyes. It was a kind of grief I had never seen before, and it scared me more than I cared to admit. Ever since I could remember, I had been close to Mom. She had been the guiding hand, the gentle voice that smoothed out my teenage insecurities, especially regarding the little secret I'd carried since high school, my fascination with feminine fashion and crossdressing. It wasn't just a hobby. It was a part of me I'd nurtured quietly, experimenting in my room late at night, reveling in the soft textures of blouses, the swish of skirts, and the subtle empowerment of a carefully applied eyeliner. I had always feared judgment, so I had hidden this side of myself from everyone, even from Dad. But now the rules of our household had shifted. Mom's absence left a void, not only emotionally but practically. Dad, once a stoic and distant figure, now seemed fragile, almost childlike. I tried to help, making meals and tidying up, but the tension between grief and responsibility weighed heavily. His grief manifested in silence, irritability, and a peculiar dependency that I hadn't expected. I found myself drawn closer to him, not in the usual father-son dynamic, but in a way that made me increasingly uneasy. One evening, a few weeks after Mom's passing, Dad called me into the study. The dim light cast long shadows across the room, and I immediately felt the weight of something unusual in the air. "Alex," he said, his voice softer than usual, tinged with a vulnerability I had never heard before. I can't manage the house like this anymore. It's just too much. I need help." I nodded hesitantly, unsure of what he meant. "Of course, Dad. Anything I can do." He shifted in his seat, eyes darting toward the floor. I think I need someone to keep me company in a way Mom used to." His words struck me like lightning. My mind raced. Did he mean emotional support? Or was it something more? The days that followed were a mix of awkward routines and creeping realizations. Dad began requesting things that reminded me of Mom. Her favorite tea, the way she would fold the towels, even the scent she wore. At first, I complied out of obligation, trying to soothe his grief. But gradually the requests became more personal, more specific, and sometimes unsettling. He started asking me to wear certain clothes around the house. The soft blouses, the skirts, the shoes with delicate heels. I froze each time, my heart pounding in shock and a strange, forbidden thrill. I feel like she's still here when you like this," he explained one night, his hands trembling as he handed me a pastel blouse. "It's comforting. Please, Alex. Just this once." My pulse raced. A part of me wanted to refuse, to scream that this was wrong, that it was unnatural. Yet another part, the part that had always loved dressing in feminine clothes, experimenting with makeup and exploring this side of myself, was electrified by the opportunity. The forbidden nature of it, the secrecy, the intensity of performing for someone as close as Dad, created a storm of emotions I couldn't control. I found myself standing in front of the mirror in my room that evening, the blouse trembling in my hands. My reflection stared back at me, a mixture of fear, excitement, and a hint of curiosity. Slowly, almost reverently, I put it on. The fabric felt soft against my skin, the collar brushing my neck delicately. I slipped on a skirt, then added a touch of eyeliner and mascara. The transformation was subtle but undeniable. I looked different, softer, vulnerable yet strangely empowered. When I walked into the living room, Dad's eyes widened, a mix of awe and relief. "Yes, that's perfect," he whispered. My heart pounded. I felt exposed yet exhilarated. The line between helping my grieving father and exploring my own desires blurred in that moment, and I realized that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. As the days turned into weeks, the routine solidified. I became his caretaker, his confidant, and, slowly, the embodiment of his late wife in both appearance and behavior. Each request, each transformation was a test of my boundaries, my desires, and my capacity to navigate a situation that was equal parts taboo, thrilling, and emotionally complex. And so the stage was set. A house filled with memories of Mom, a grieving father seeking comfort, and a son discovering the intoxicating thrill of becoming someone else entirely. I knew one thing for certain. Once I stepped fully into this role, there would be no turning back. The mirror reflected not just my image, but the start of a journey that would challenge every boundary I had ever known, both morally and emotionally. What had begun as grief, obligation, and secrecy was rapidly evolving into a life-altering transformation, one that would test my courage, my identity, and the limits of my desires. The days following Mom's funeral settled into a strange rhythm. Dad became increasingly dependent, relying on me not just for practical tasks but for companionship, guidance, and comfort. Each request for feminine attire, gentle gestures, or even a touch of makeup created a tension I could feel vibrating through my entire body. At first I resisted, telling myself it was wrong, unnatural, maybe even taboo. Yet beneath the shame, a hidden thrill bubbled up, a forbidden excitement I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. One evening, Dad hesitated at the doorway of my room, holding a delicate pair of slippers he had found in Mom's closet. "Alex, would you maybe wear these tonight? Just for me?" His voice trembled slightly. I froze, caught between instinctive refusal and the dangerous pull of curiosity. Slowly, trembling, I slid my feet into the soft slippers. The warmth of the fabric against my skin, the delicate brush of the straps, sent shivers up my spine. As I emerged into the living room, Dad's eyes softened, a mix of relief and longing that made my heart pound. He reached out, guiding my posture, adjusting my shoulders subtly. "Just like she used to stand, just like that," he murmured. I felt a strange duality, awkwardness mixed with exhilaration, as I realized I was stepping fully into a role that was simultaneously caring, nurturing, and intensely personal. Over the next week, the routine expanded. Dad asked me to prepare meals in Mom's favorite apron, style my hair in the ways Mom had, and even practice sitting and walking as she had taught him to watch. Each request felt like a test of my boundaries, and each time I complied, a part of me transformed as well. The mirror in my room became a tool, a stage where I explored the nuances of appearance, posture, and behavior, pushing the limits of what I had thought possible for myself. But with each passing day, the thrill of transformation was tempered by fear. What if someone discovered this? What if Dad's friends or relatives visited unexpectedly? The stakes were high, and the tension in our home built like a coiled spring ready to snap. I began to notice little changes in Dad too. He became more assertive in his requests, more controlling in subtle ways, and yet oddly tender. It was a paradox that left me simultaneously anxious and intrigued. One night, after a particularly intense session of styling, he paused and said, "Alex, I don't just want you to wear her clothes. I want you to be her, at least when you're with me. Fully. Every detail. Can you do that?" My stomach dropped. This wasn't just play anymore. It was a permanent, immersive expectation. The thrill surged with a dark edge of fear. Could I maintain this dual life without losing myself? The transformations became more elaborate. I learned to apply makeup like Mom did: foundation, eyeliner, mascara, blush. I experimented with different hairstyles, wigs, and accessories. Each detail mattered. Dad watched intently, correcting the slightest imperfection. "No, like this, exactly like she did," he'd say, his eyes glimmering with a mix of nostalgia and desire. I felt both scrutinized and strangely empowered. Physically, the changes were transformative. The soft fabrics of blouses, the gentle swish of skirts, and the restrictive yet elegant sensation of stockings altered the way I moved, breathed, and carried myself. Emotionally, the duality intensified. Alex, the son, and Alex, the surrogate of Mom, coexisted in tension and harmony, creating a constant internal struggle between identity, obligation, and desire. Yet the real suspense emerged from unpredictability. Occasionally, the doorbell rang unexpectedly, neighbors visited, or Dad's old friends dropped by. Each time, my heart raced as I scrambled to maintain the illusion, adjusting my posture, voice, and clothing. One close call nearly exposed everything. My skirt caught on a chair edge, nearly revealing the meticulous efforts I had made to emulate Mom. I froze, breath caught, praying that Dad would quickly distract the visitors. As the days turned into weeks, I also began to notice subtle psychological shifts. I felt more attuned to Dad's emotions, more aware of his needs and vulnerabilities, and simultaneously more aware of my own desires for expression, validation, and identity exploration. The line between caretaking and personal thrill blurred, making every encounter charged with tension and fascination. Then came the moment that escalated everything. Dad handed me a small, delicate necklace that had belonged to Mom. "Wear this. Always. Part of her. Part of you now," he whispered. Sliding it around my neck, I felt a shiver of fear and exhilaration. This symbolic gesture marked the point of no return. I wasn't just wearing her clothes or adopting her mannerisms, I was embodying her presence, fulfilling a role that would challenge every boundary I had known. Internal conflict surged. Shame and guilt warred with excitement and curiosity. Each day brought new challenges: refining posture, perfecting makeup, learning Mom's habits, and responding to Dad's increasingly intense emotional reliance. I was trapped in a suspenseful cycle, excited by the thrill of transformation, yet terrified of the consequences if my dual life were discovered. By the end of the build-up, I had fully stepped into my new identity within the home. I was no longer just Alex, the son, but Alex, the surrogate wife, navigating a web of emotional, psychological, and physical transformations. The stakes had risen. One misstep could unravel everything, one sudden visitor could expose the truth, and one slip in behavior could shatter the fragile balance we had constructed. And yet, the thrill of becoming someone else, the forbidden, taboo, and intoxicating allure of crossdressing in service of grief, desire, and obedience, kept me tethered to the role. I knew deep down that this was just the beginning. The real challenges, the suspense, and the intense emotional transformations were yet to come. The days blurred into a rhythm of transformation and tension. I had become adept at fulfilling Dad's increasingly exacting expectations, matching his late wife's wardrobe, mimicking her gestures, and even adopting her gentle, nurturing tone. But the thrill that had once excited me now mingled with a gnawing anxiety. I could feel the walls closing in. Every glance from a neighbor, every phone call, every sound from the street became a potential threat. One evening, as I adjusted my hair in the bedroom mirror, Dad entered unexpectedly. "Alex, I want you to come with me tonight," he said, holding an envelope. His tone was both commanding and tender. "It's time you show everyone just how Mom would have done it." I froze. A public outing? Exposing myself outside the walls of our home? Panic and excitement collided violently. I don't know if," I started, my voice trembling. "You can do this," Dad insisted. "You look just like her. Everyone will love you. Trust me." Reluctantly, I dressed in the ensemble he had chosen. A soft, floral dress that hugged my waist, paired with delicate heels and Mom's pearl necklace. Each detail was scrutinized, adjusted, perfected. The physical transformation was complete, but the emotional burden weighed heavily. My reflections stared back at me, the line between Alex and the surrogate wife vanishing. I wasn't sure who I was anymore. We drove to a social gathering Dad had invited me to, a small dinner with neighbors and family friends. As we entered, I felt every eye on me. I moved carefully, heels clicking softly on the floor, hands gripping my clutch tightly. Dad's pride was palpable. He introduced me as Mom's memory, carried on beautifully. The room reacted as expected, polite compliments, admiring glances, but then came the twist. One of Mom's old friends, Mrs. Langley, lingered near the edge of the room, her gaze sharp. "Alex, is that really you?" she asked, suspicion lacing her voice. Panic surged. I forced a smile, mimicking Mom's warmth. "Yes, I'm just helping Dad remember her." My voice wavered slightly, betraying my fear. Mrs. Langley nodded slowly, but her eyes did not leave me. I could feel every bead of sweat forming, my pulse racing. The room's warmth, the noise, the constant scrutiny, it all became overwhelming. My body ached from the heels, my makeup felt suffocating, and the dress clung uncomfortably. Then disaster struck. A tray of drinks toppled near me, one glass shattering on the floor. I instinctively moved to catch it, losing balance and nearly falling. The room gasped. Dad's eyes widened, a mix of concern and embarrassment. My heart sank. I was seconds away from exposure, my secret vulnerable in front of everyone. I steadied myself, hands trembling, and felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Mrs. Langley again. "Alex, you're very convincing," she said, her tone softening but her eyes piercing. "But you must know, some things can't be hidden forever." The words struck me like lightning. Doubt and fear coursed through me. Had she seen through the transformation? Did she suspect the duality of my identity? I could feel my emotional control slipping. Back at home, the tension escalated further. Dad, oblivious to my inner turmoil, praised my performance, urging me to continue embodying Mom's presence. But I felt a fracture within myself, a split between obligation, thrill, and dread. The more I embraced the persona, the more I feared losing Alex entirely. Over the following days, unexpected obstacles arose. Neighbors lingered longer than usual, family friends offered unsolicited compliments, and Dad's reliance intensified. One evening, I discovered a package on the doorstep. A letter from an unknown sender, carefully sealed. My hands shook as I opened it. I know what you're doing. The game isn't over. Be careful. Fear gripped me. Someone knew, or at least suspected. Each transformation, each interaction became a high-stakes performance, teetering on the edge of exposure. I began to second-guess every gesture, every word, every subtle glance. Then came the pivotal moment. Dad, increasingly assertive, demanded I spend the weekend entirely as his surrogate wife, dressing, acting, and behaving in every way as Mom would. The expectation was total. The weight of it crushed me, yet the thrill of submission and transformation surged through me. I realized there was no turning back. I was trapped in a dual existence, navigating grief, desire, and identity with no clear boundaries. During a particularly tense evening, I stood before the mirror, adjusting the pearl necklace and smoothing the dress. My reflection stared back, half Alex, half the surrogate wife. A sudden sound at the door, a key turning in the lock, made me freeze. It was Dad, returning earlier than expected. Panic surged, and in the chaos, the necklace slipped and my wig tilted. "Alex, are you ready?" he asked, oblivious to the near catastrophe. I nodded, hands shaking, heart racing. Every step, every gesture became a test of composure. The mirror reflected my dual selves, the obedient surrogate, the hidden Alex, and the tension that bound them together. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that carried its own weight, a mix of anticipation, fear, and unspoken tension. I stood in my room, adjusting the last details of my outfit, smoothing the dress, straightening the wig, and making sure the pearl necklace sat perfectly at my collarbone. My reflection stared back at me, Alex, transformed, delicate, and trembling under the weight of expectations. Dad's voice called softly from the living room. "Alex, dinner's ready. Come as her." My heart skipped a beat. Every step I took toward the living room felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm. Each footfall in the heels was a reminder that one misstep could expose everything. As I entered, Dad smiled warmly, a mix of pride and longing in his eyes. "You look perfect. Just like her." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I wanted to smile, to feel the thrill of affirmation, but a knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. What if someone else walked through that door? What if the neighbors, friends, or someone entirely unexpected had discovered the secret I had carefully nurtured? The sound of a key turning in the lock froze me mid-step. My stomach dropped and I felt my pulse spike. Dad hadn't expected anyone else home, yet the doorknob rattled, followed by a faint voice calling, "Hello?" My heart thudded violently against my ribcage. Panic surged as I darted behind the living room couch, pressing my hands against my face to steady my trembling. The voice grew closer, footsteps echoing in the hallway. My heels clicked against the floor as I tried to move silently, but each step felt deafening, betraying my presence. Dad looked confused, glancing toward the door. "Alex, what's—" A sudden gasp echoed through the hall and I froze. The door creaked open, revealing a figure silhouetted in the dim light. My mind raced. Who could it be? A neighbor? Family friend? Or someone who had discovered the truth, the letter that had warned me days ago? The stranger stepped into the room and my breath caught in my throat. The silhouette became clearer, familiar yet threatening. Their eyes locked on me, scanning every inch, and I felt the crushing weight of exposure pressing down. My entire body trembled. The dual life I had meticulously maintained teetered on the edge of collapse. Dad moved slightly in front of me, protective yet unaware of the full danger. "Alex, it's okay," he said, trying to reassure both of us, but his voice sounded small, almost powerless. The stranger's gaze didn't waver. "So this is the secret," they said softly, a hint of curiosity and disbelief in their tone. My heart lurched. The words, simple yet loaded, cut through the tension, leaving me frozen. Time seemed to stretch. My reflection in the nearby mirror stared back. Alex, vulnerable and exposed, the surrogate of mom, caught between fear and the forbidden thrill that had brought me this far. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. I can explain. But the stranger only smiled faintly, stepping closer. I think I already know enough. The air grew thick with suspense. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears, every breath felt stolen. The room, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a stage where the consequences of my choices waited to strike. I realized that nothing would ever be the same. The secret I had guarded so fiercely, the delicate balance of identity, desire, and obligation, was on the brink of unraveling. And then, the cliffhanger. The stranger reached out a hand just as Dad moved to shield me, and the scene froze in tension. A mixture of fear, anticipation, and unresolved possibility. Would they expose me? Could I maintain the delicate illusion? Was this the end of my dual life, or the beginning of a new, even more dangerous chapter? The screen fades to black, leaving viewers breathless, hearts racing, and minds buzzing with questions.